know if there's anyone here. I actually don't know. Oh, like, look, there's a chat. Somebody's here. Corley's here.
Hey!
Leave early. Well, it's probably not going to be a full hour, Corley, so maybe you won't.
Boom. Okay, so I'm doing the things with the buttons.
It'll be a full hour, Corley, so maybe you won't. Oh, it's delayed.
So I'm doing the things with the buttons. Wait, I have to get mute stuff.
It'll be a full hour, Corley, so maybe you won't. Oh, it's delayed.
So I'm doing the things with the buttons. Wait, I have to get mute stuff.
I'm going to mute. Okay, you got it. There you go. Okay.
Yeah, sorry, I don't really...
So this is our very first time doing this, so thank you for being patient while we're figuring this out. I am going to go on Facebook here and see. I wonder if there were any comments left after we posted that thing.
Wait. That's not the right thing. I'm chasing us down. I'm trying to find the live feed here so I can share it out to all our pages.
If anybody's there, now would be a great time to start submitting your questions.
There it is. Boom. That's going. Yeah, I wonder if I can find the mute button.
Okay, it looks like there's 9 views but no comments.
Okay. Yeah, I wonder if I can find the mute button. Haha. I haven't found it yet. Here, I'll mute me now. Go ahead and tell a story.
Okay. So once upon a time, we were trying to figure out how to get this thing to work on Facebook so that we can see you and see your comments while you are chatting with us and asking questions. Truth is, if nobody's here to ask questions, we're just going to talk about stuff. And we have some ideas, topics that we could discuss. But this is going to get a lot more interesting, I think, when people start submitting questions, and then we can start a dialogue. This can go back and forth. That's my goal. That's my interest. Why I'm excited about doing this. Questions about NLP, hypnosis, how you apply them in life and with clients, and ideally, I'd love to actually be doing some work with volunteers. I'm going to start putting more and more feelers out about that because I want to show people how cool this stuff really is. And I don't know a better way to do it than doing it for real.
Plus, it's fun to put out feelers.
Absolutely.
Feelers. All right.
Okay. Are you seeing eyeballs and quotes and things?
Okay, we've got shadow and light potentially coming up. We may cover that. Yeah.
Yeah.
We can cover that.
Yeah, one question here that says, talk about how to bring balance to your shadow side and light side. Okay.
Okay. Yeah, so we'd had plans. I just want to, we're all here. It's Thursday, right, today? Just in case anyone else like me needs to be reminded the day of the week. It is Thursday. It is 11-ish on the West Coast, Pacific time. I've got my emergency chocolate today brought to everyone by Salazon Chocolate Company. It's dark chocolate, sea salt, and cayenne.
Oh, cayenne.
It's there in case, so everybody's taken care of because I have chocolate.
Yeah.
Yeah. Your morning's been brought to you by Nicholas Has a New Haircut. Very important.
I do.
Fresh. Look at that fade. Is it a fade?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Kind of a sharp edge.
Fair. So we were chatting earlier about maybe talking about some of the foundations and presuppositions of NLP.
Yeah. You also brought up the topic of what is reality, what are beliefs, and emotional overwhelm was a topic that has come up a few times.
Sure, and how NLP can be useful in that. So how about we start here? I'm Adrianne Gunn.
Oh, I'm Nicholas Rave.
Yeah. We can start by saying who the heck we are. And some of you are people. I saw my friend Ginny is watching. Hey, Ginny. Hey, girl. Something about football is happening, but I don't know if you're happy about it. Right? Football's important. So, Yeah, so some of the structures, I've been thinking a little bit about perception is projection. The idea that whatever you see outside is a reflection of what is on the inside.
Yeah, Carl Jung.
And a few weeks back, we were talking about how some of the foundations and tenets of NLP are useful, and that they might not necessarily be true. And yet, since NLP is a study of people who are successful and get great results, there are a lot of beliefs that, well, and beliefs being hallucinations and delusions of reality, some of them are more useful than others, and it depends on context.
We need to define a couple things there, because you just dropped some bombs. Yeah. So Richard Bandler and John Grinder used to start some, at least, of their talks or seminars by saying the first thing out of their mouth would be, everything we're about to tell you is a lie. Because everything in language is a generalization, even what I just said. And a generalization, there is information that is deleted and distorted and generalized in all communication. And because of that, no communication is ever accurate.
Mm-hmm.
This concept applies to what we say as well as what we think. And what we think boils down as one kind of thought that we can have is a thing called a belief. And the point of a belief is that it is a rule of thumb. It's like a useful rule of thumb, but you don't put your whole life on a rule of thumb, generally. They're not true. They're not universally accurate. They are things that are useful in certain circumstances, and really, really valuable beliefs are the ones that are the most useful in the most number of circumstances. But there are a lot of beliefs that are only applicable contextually.
Right. Well,
they're all not real.
Much like rule of thumb, these beliefs are the kinds of things that sometimes you can beat yourself and other people with.
Yes.
I went to the true definition of rule of thumb. Anyone? Anyone?
Oh, no.
Where?
Good. That was good. I like it.
I thought it was brilliant.
I didn't follow, but that's because I'm not up. You were good. Like, don't apologize for it. Your joke was smarter than us.
Yeah, I'm supposed to increase the obviosity of some of my jokes, is what I was told by my comedic teacher. No, people don't know the rule of thumb. You're allowed to hit your children, your wife, your cattle with something the width of your thumb is rule of thumb.
Holy crap, that is a world. Like, when I look at the level of freaking trauma that we all have in our lives, and I look at just the 1950s and the way that and I still see it today. Like, I got so mad the other day watching videos from, I like Jimmy Kimmel, and he does these clips sometimes that are like telling kids that they got rid of all their Christmas presents, or telling kids that they ate all their Halloween candy. That is so horrific to me. It is a complete misunderstanding that your children have a different model of the world. That would be like playing a prank on someone that you burned down their house with their wife in it. Right. That's what it means to the kid. That's the kind of heartbreak and upset that you see in these kids, and people are fucking laughing at it. And I look at that stuff and I go, well, no wonder we live in this crazy, narcissistic, traumatized society. Pisses me off.
I'm going to go see if I can find whether people have said things to us.
Okay, I'm going to ask Coralie some questions about shadow side, light side. So, Coralie, this is not the first time you've asked this question. Can you tell me a little bit about what's the problem here? Like, what do you want to know about balancing the shadow side and light side? Is this a problem for you? Do you feel like your shadow side is overtaking you or something? I'm not trying to pick a fight. I want to know what direction to go with answering this question, if you know what I mean. Is Coralie still here? Maybe she's writing. She looks like she's still there, and you're muted. Yeah, are you meant to be muted? Yeah, okay, that's fine. Oh, she says she's still here. So, I mean, just very briefly, in case somebody, I'll talk about it very briefly while you're writing additional thoughts. The concept of the shadow side and light side of a person is that we all have the capacity for, let's call it evil inside of us. And that we tend to, we were talking about perception as projection earlier, the idea that anything you see outside of yourself is a reflection of what's going on inside. So we tend to push outside of ourselves, to project most strongly onto other people the things that are most reprehensible to us about ourselves. My favorite story to talk about this, and I find this to be probably the most, one of the most useful spiritual paradigms that I've ever heard, a parable about a paradigm. And it's the story of a warrior and speaking to a shaman. And he says, a young warrior, and he says, inside of you, there is a war going on between two wolves, a black wolf and a white wolf, or a light wolf and a dark wolf. And the dark wolf is fear and hate and jealousy, and the light wolf is love and compassion and caring and courage. And the young warrior says, which wolf wins? And the shaman says, whichever one you feed. Here's the thing though. The darkness feeds on darkness. That's a metaphor, but let me be specific. Fear feeds on fear. There's a part of you that is designed to be afraid, and it doesn't get used nearly often enough in our modern civilization, because you're not being chased by saber-toothed fucking tigers all the time. So I've heard the theory that there's like a quota of fear that most people have that they need to experience. And if you don't experience it in healthy ways, you're going to experience it in unhealthy ways. You're going to look out at the world and you're going to see it as a terrifying place. What is a healthy way? Well, I think that there are positive and negative versions of everything. Fear is one side of something, but on the other side of that emotion, you could imagine excitement. There's a relation between those two things. So when it comes to the shadow side and the light side, my understanding is that the only way to balance the two is through acceptance. It is through becoming conscious of all that you are unconscious of, bringing the darkness into the light and examining it without adding more darkness, which is usually fear, judgment, literally tension in your body. So it's all the things we judge about ourselves are the things that we push down, and then they're the things that we both see outside of us and that come out in our behavior uncontrollably. If you push anger down, you're going to find yourself uncontrollably angry. So get okay with the part of yourself that feels angry. The only way to deal with demons is to realize that all demons are fallen angels. And it's only through re-embracing them and understanding them that they stop being monsters.
I have there was a recent conversation in photo. If we're talking about shadow side and monsters and acceptance. There's a recent friend of mine posted a photo. There's a photo of Hitler with a little girl. And one of the things that person had said was profound, that when we demonize and say that Hitler was a monster,
yeah,
it distanced us from realizing he was a man, an actual man who was capable of what he was capable of. And that distancing us made it, and calling him a monster made it other than us, and not recognizing that we're all capable
Yes.
of some immense things that we don't necessarily, like, we don't know we're capable of. And that can be dangerous, not to recognize that there's aspects of our animal we could be feeding or not feeding.
It is a matter to me, there is a solution to compassion for others. And it is valuable to have compassion for others. If someone else makes you uncontrollably angry, they are in charge of you. You are no longer in charge of you. You have given your power over to them. So it is incredibly valuable and useful to get compassion, because it's a way of clearing your judgment and your trigger on another human being. If you want to be able to negotiate effectively, you can't go into it with a lot of hot button issues. So there's a secret key to compassion. And for me, it is understanding that none of us have free will. This is a controversial statement, but it really isn't if you look into it. There's a book called Free Will by Sam Harris. I recommend it to everybody. He lays the case out pretty effectively. But it basically shows that if you were born in a different environment, with a different body, with different DNA and different genetics and different experiences, you would be a different person. And specifically, if you were that person, you wouldn't be, we all think that if I was that person, I would have made different decisions. I would have taken different actions. No, you wouldn't. You're lucky that you've had the life that you've had up till now. You don't have control over this. You don't even have control over this. You are in charge of it, and you can influence it. That's what it means to feed one wolf or another, but you don't control it. And I think understanding and having compassion for Hitler is like, he has become an archetype. He's a legend. He's a demon, a devil that we all, like, it's shorthand. Mm-hmm. Become this cultural touchstone. So dealing with your shit and judgment about him is a really valuable way to have it trickle down to a lot of other people. And I'll tell you what changed it for me. I found out, first of all, I heard the whole story about him being an artist and like being a failed artist and really wanting to be successful and loving art, but not having the talent or the skill to stick with it and to develop that talent.
There's nothing more maddening that I've witnessed and probably never experienced myself. Cheek, tongue. Anyway, being an artist and then having it not necessarily go the way you thought it was going to.
Yeah, because you have something inside and you can't get it out.
And no one's accepting what you're offering.
But add to this something that only recently, another big one was that Hitler was a drug addict. He went through, this is really important. He went through something like 40 different doctors that all came to him and said, you are on amphetamines, meth. You're using copious amounts of meth all the time. And you need to stop or you're going to die. He fired all of them except for the one that would keep giving him all the drugs that he wanted. Add to this that I've heard the theory that Hitler was, we think of them as this mad genius, but in actuality, he was a lot more like a super evil Forrest Gump. That like he went through life in just the right place at the right time. He was a very good orator. He was a very good speaker. But like this dude would require time to go in his private movie theater and watch 1 to 2 movies a day in the middle of World War II, and he would not allow anyone to come in. He would read stupid pulpy novels about the Old West, and he would try to get his generals to implement strategies that were written in these books about the generals fighting the Redskins, and like that is not a mastermind genius. That is a child in many, many ways. But it all came together for me when fairly recently some evidence came out, medical reports, that Adolf Hitler had a micropenis. And it was a deformed micropenis. The hole was on the bottom of his penis. And it's quite possible that he was a virgin, because he had so many horrific experiences trying, or maybe just a few, trying to have sex. And I have studied enough about the sex drive in human beings. We have fight, flight, food, and freeze, and fuck. This is a core part of what makes us run as animals. And when that thing gets twisted, I mean, this is really controversial, but I'm going to say it anyway. One of my favorite comedians, a guy named Bill Maher, said once, he was talking about shootings, and he was talking about all these mass shootings. And he said, you know, there's one thing that I've never heard anybody talk about that's a common factor about all of these people. First of all, they're all men, and none of them were getting laid.
Yep.
Sexual repression is an amazing tool to keep most people in line. But occasionally, you get one or two that go bonkers because they just can't deal with it. Why am I talking about this? Because we're talking about gaining compassion for Hitler. Does having compassion for Hitler justify what he did?
No.
Absolutely not. That's not the point. But the point is, if you think about some Hitler or someone like Hitler, or you believe is like Hitler in any way, and you feel triggered, you are no longer in the position of power. You've given your emotional power away.
I think essentially it may be useful to assume that we think we're surrounded by adults, but in fact we're probably surrounded by giant wounded children
And animals.
And animals that haven't had sex that was really good in a very long time.
Yep.
And that they're in a lot of pain.
Yep.
That we don't necessarily understand.
And almost all of them will say, why are you even talking about sex? This isn't about sex. I don't need sex. I haven't had sex in 10 years. I'm fine.
It's totally okay with me.
What does this have to do with anything? Why? I'm not angry.
Sex is evil. We shouldn't do it. Anyway, so we're talking about getting into somebody else's model of the world because it's useful. And why is it useful? Once we can appreciate that if we were in the same positions as someone else, we would have made the exact same decisions that they did. Why is that useful?
Because it allows us to have compassion for other people and ourselves. Because it allows you to look at someone else's behavior and go, not attribute agency to it. To not like I'll give you this example. I was driving in the car with my son one time, and we hit a bunch of red lights while we were on the way to something. And Pierce got really frustrated, and he said, I don't think the lights want us to get there on time. Okay. He's 7, maybe 6 at the time. He attributes agency to the lights. Like the lights were doing this on purpose.
Only 6-year-olds do this, by the way.
Right.
Not all of the people.
First of all, lots of us do the same thing to inanimate objects and the weather, which, by the way, doesn't give a shit about you.
Right.
But lots of us do it in those contexts. But worst of all, we do it with other people. We go, okay, well, yeah, all these other things are like random acts, and I don't have to take them personally. But that person did this thing to me, and they knew what they were doing. They knew it. And so that gives me justification to hate them. But if you look at other people, you look at their actions, and you go, they could not be any different than who they are. Everyone is doing the best they can with the resources they have available. It's one of the presuppositions of NLP, and that, if you take it to its furthest extent, is the doorway to infinite compassion. And through compassion, you gain power and influence. So if compassion's not compelling enough to you, do it, because you become a more powerful and empowered person when you have compassion.
It certainly feels better to that belief. Actually, Brene Brown, that specific presupposition, Brene Brown talks about in, I believe it's Rising Strong. So she's got many books out. There's sort of three that work quite well together: Gifts of Imperfection, Daring Greatly, and Rising Strong. And one of the stories is about she and her husband are talking about this belief that everybody's doing the best that they can with the resources they have. And when she first heard that from her therapist, she's like, that's a crock of shit.
Yeah.
Because Brene is from Texas and they're feisty there.
Yeah.
And I can totally relate with my own feistiness. And so she started talking to her husband about whether he thought that was true. And he basically said, whether it's actually true or not, whether they're actually doing the best they can, I like the way my life feels. My life feels better when I choose to believe that everyone is doing the best that they can with what they have.
So this, let's bring it full circle, because we're talking about beliefs, right? So that is a thing I've been saying for a long time, which is you don't need to have beliefs that are true. You need to have beliefs that are useful, because all beliefs are going to be true in some contexts and not true in others. I will add, as an important balance to that the more in alignment with reality, or let's call it objective truth, that your beliefs are, the better they will function. So frequently, if your life isn't working and you examine your beliefs, you will find that they are out of alignment with how the world works. So while it is true that you don't have to have beliefs that are true, you can just have beliefs that are useful, it is also true that beliefs that are more true will generally be more useful.
Fair. We've covered a few things. I saw Rachel Jackson's in here for a little while.
Also, Coralie wrote a reply. So let me read that.
Fair.
It says, no, I'm not having trouble with the shadow side. Just have a new aspect of it that relates to the weight. I'm beginning to think that I focus on the weight as a negative thing and put too much energy into losing it. Seems to me that there needs balance somehow. What do I do what do I focus on to bring balance? If not letting go of the weight, what? Perfect question. Okay, so Coralie, you want to lose weight, and you feel that the shadow side is somehow connected to the weight that you have on your body. So here's, going back to what I said, the shadow side is dark only because it is unconscious, only because we don't know it. Everyone's a stranger until you get to know them, and then they become a friend. So your shadow is a stranger and therefore an enemy because they are unknown. So know them, get to know them. What do I mean by that? I mean, become friends with your fear, with your anger, with your pain, with your guilt, with your shame. Become friends with them. Give them a voice. It's as simple as this. Do you have any fear? Do you have any pain? Do you have any shame related to your weight? Yes. Good. Where does that shame live in your body? I don't know what you're talking about. I know you don't, but pretend that you did. If the shame lived in your body, where do you feel it? Oh, right here. Good. Put your hand on that spot. Put your hand on that spot on your body, and now allow that shame to talk. What do you have to teach me? What are you? What purpose do you serve? How are you trying to help me? What is your job? What is your name? What do you look like? Where did you come from? Every single one of these answers will be valuable. And there is something inherently healing about just asking the questions, and all of a sudden your unconscious mind, your shadow side, begins to open up. And trust that you're not going to turn around and be like, you're bad, you're evil, I hate you. That's the judgment that keeps us stuck. There's a quote that I love: shame is the cage that we lock our wounds inside so that we can't heal them.
You know that's your quote, right?
Well, I wasn't going to say that. It's just
there's a quote that I love. just drop that right there.
Thank you for pointing it out.
I think it's an amazing quote, and I think it's yours, and people should know that.
There's a thing that I say. So anyway, when it comes to the weight, okay, learn to love your body. I know that sounds so cliche, and people here, I don't like the word love. Okay, I really don't. Like I'm a linguist. I love language, and I study it. And I don't like the word love because I think in our culture it means so many different things that has effectively become meaningless.
Right.
So there's a much simpler word. What is judgment? So when I think about my weight, okay, like if I'm you, and I think about my weight, I recently lost 45 pounds. So I went through this as I healed this. When I thought about my weight, or interestingly, when I thought about other people who I thought were overweight and I felt my judgment about that, a whole bunch of emotions came up. I felt angry. I felt like I'm mad at myself. I'm mad at the fat. I'm mad that it's there. It hurts me, and it doesn't know how much it hurts me. And I'm angry because I can't get the love that I want because that fat is in the way. But then I also found that I was ashamed. I was ashamed of my weight, but I was also ashamed of my judgment of my weight.
Right.
Shame. Like, you shouldn't have those judgments about other people. And I would tell myself that I didn't. I don't have judgments about other people. People can be any weight that they want, but deep down, I had judgment about it. If they were really healthy, if they really cared about themselves, if they really loved themselves, they wouldn't have that weight on their body. That was in here.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't until I was able to go in and find compassion for myself for having those thoughts, feelings, and beliefs. What does that actually mean? Like, this is so metaphorical. I want to make it very, very practical, okay? When you think about something like your weight and you feel anger, fear, sadness, guilt, hate, judgment, shame, that emotion manifests in your body as tension. All of those emotions manifest in your body as tension. So what's the opposite of tension, Adrianne?
Sorry, I was reading other people's comments.
The opposite of tension.
Oh wait, I've heard of this. It has something to do with, there's a thing people do with relaxing.
Starts with an R.
Relaxing, I've heard of it.
That's the one, relaxing. The opposite of tension is relaxation. And relaxation is a doorway into a word that I like a lot better than love. And that word is pleasure. So if you want to know how to learn to love your body the way that it is, think about your body the way that it is and feel pleasure. However you need to do that. Real pleasure, not like 99% pleasure and 1% I still hate myself.
Right.
Touch your body and feel pleasure. Touch yourself. There's an exercise that I love called compassionate self-touch. And all it is you take one hand and you take your other hand and you touch this hand as if you were reaching out to touch the hand of a dear friend who was at the end of their rope, sad, hurting, exhausted. And the only thing they need, the thing they need more than anything else, is someone to just touch their hand and say, it's okay. Reach out and touch your own hand that way. Notice what it feels like. Touch your hand the way that you so desperately wish someone would. Another way you can do this that I love is to touch your own body the way you would touch a lover. And not like, I mean really, like do it for real. Like, how would you touch someone? If you ask your arm, how does it want to be touched? And touch it that way. Another trick that I like is I love the tops of babies' heads. Like infants, you touch the top of their head, it's so soft, and you like hold the head in your palm like this. There's nothing that feels like that. So I often will think about myself and the part of me that was alive when I was like that, when I was that old. That part of me is still inside me, and it still misses being touched like that. And it needs to be from time to time. So, yeah, tension is judgment, is negative emotions. They all have something to teach us. And ultimately, you have to relax. You have to let go of the tension and the judgment and find pleasure on the other side. Pleasure is a better word than compassion and love because it's a chunk up on all of those other words. Joy, happiness. I hate happiness. Ugh. Joy, happiness, love, compassion. Compassion has more value. But pleasure, that is the word.
Yeah, I'm going to check in with a couple things. So Coralie said some things, and then she's at a point where she's not able to respond, but she has us on her phone. Thank you. Rachel is still with us and curious about some, let's see, is there ever a point where a person becomes so accepting of others that small talk becomes difficult?
Interesting question. Well,
I've found actually.
Go ahead.
When I'm in a state where I am purely loving of others and everything, even so loving that, I mean, sometimes I can get in such a heightened state of love for everything that I want to rub the walls. That's just me. So I find that it's much easier to actually have, okay, she's saying, is small talk difficult? Absolutely, because if you can truly see someone and appreciate them, you can quickly and easily get into deeper kinds of conversations and connection.
So, yeah, I definitely think that it can happen, and I want to analyze the presupposition in the question first.
The small talk is good?
No, the presupposition in the question there's lots, but the one that I'm wanting to question is, she said, can you ever get so accepting of other people that small talk becomes difficult? So separate those two things. Can you get too accepting of other people? Yeah. Does that always lead to small talk becoming difficult? No. You're implying a causal relationship between I have a hard time with small talk and I think that's because I'm too accepting. Break that. Break that connection and say you have a hard time with small talk, period, end of sentence. And you don't know why you have that challenge. And you may also be too accepting of other people, period, end of sentence. That's a different issue. They may be connected, but break them first. Break them first to analyze them separately. And then I would say small talk to me has to do with the purpose of the conversation. If the purpose of the conversation is to connect, I think of small talk as like a verbal example of like dogs sniffing each other's butts. So like dogs and like apes will come up to the other animal and they will almost like wrestle. They'll like move their whole body around the other animal and get in their space, and it's like getting to know each other. And I see small talk as like a verbal version of that. But I would say that with enough rapport, why is small talk difficult for you? Are you devaluing some experience that might be happening or wanting to happen through small talk? I mean, small talk to me is like if I'm dating somebody and we're flirting back and forth, there's nothing of significance that is being shared. There's an emotional experience that is being shared that is irreplaceable. And I feel when I'm in a conversation, I'm flirting with somebody and I drop out of it and we start talking about serious shit. And I'm like, oh, this isn't fun anymore. But like that initial conversation is substanceless, but it's emotional. And I think that's the purpose of real small talk, is have that emotional experience, joke and tease and get into rapport with each other. And then, why are you talking to this person? For what purpose? That's the thing.
I have some thoughts on this. So small talk is not universal. What the conversation is that's included in small talk, potentially, since we aren't aware that we can just sniff each other out.
Yeah.
Talk is there for us to find out if another person is safe or not.
I agree. And
in different cultures, I remember I was studying African literature and South American literature. In very different cultures and tribes in different countries, small talk could take forever, because in the culture you're supposed to ask about every family member.
Otherwise it's disrespectful.
Otherwise it's disrespectful. And so there's an element of small talk. I am one of these hidden introverts that loves to get into the deep. Like if I go to a barbecue or a party, I'm the one that like wiggles in and then finds the one person to have a 2-hour conversation in the kitchen.
Yeah.
And then go. And I'm like, I did the barbecue. Or I'm like on stage playing in the band in the backyard. And that's it. Those are the two things that I generally could do. But one of the things that I'm like, small talk, I don't like it because it's this forced cultural thing that we have to all ascribe to, and it feels like a cage to me. But like in different places, even I noticed this, I mentioned Texas earlier. I was in Austin for a seminar. I believe you were there as well. And I live now in Portland, Oregon. And when you walk through like a hallway on the way to the bathroom, or if you're in a convenience store, if you're walking along the street, if you're in an elevator, or you're walking up and down the stairs, in Portland, those are transitional zones where people have their own thoughts and it's quiet, and just that's like alone time, like standing at the corner. In Austin, it's like an extrovert town. In Austin, if you're in an elevator, you pass another human, you engage and you make thoughtful, deep eye contact, and like you can't just be glancing at bottles of water in the convenience store, because that's connection time. And I was like, what's going on? I felt crazy because I hadn't had alone time. Here was this small talk that people kept going into more depth. Similar, I was in a comedy class with a woman from New York, and she, for some reason, the place where in Portland people aren't as introverted is in the grocery store line. So there are these stores in town where people are super friendly. Like there's a chain of stores that's the friendliest place in the neighborhood, or something like that is their slogan. So this New Yorker would stand in the line just wanting to buy her bananas and broccoli, right? And she'd have to like endure deep conversation after deep conversation at the check stand, because your grocery people care about you here. Small talk.
You made me think of another reframe on this, which is maybe you want to examine what you're defining as small talk, because anything you say that is small talk is sort of presupposed to be less valuable or less interesting or whatever. But I look at it as like I go into a conversation with an intent. What is that intent? It might be because I want to, see if someone is a good potential client, or I want to help someone with a problem, or I want to buy food from someone, or it could be to connect, to make someone laugh. Well, what is the intent that you're going in there with? And if you begin with that intent, if you at least have it conscious and aware that there is an intent for this conversation, then it becomes a matter of, I was thinking about myself in one of those other cultures where the small talk is really long. Yeah. And I asked myself, would I know that? Would I have the sensory acuity to notice that we're not done with small talk yet? Because I'm observing them and I'm like, rapport has not been achieved. But then again, could you also get to that level of rapport and bypass their typical ways of doing it? Would you want to? It depends on why you're talking. So it comes back to intent for me. And I also think about, like, you said the thing about the grocery store, and I thought there was a part of me that said, there's a time in my life when that would have been a living hell.
Absolutely.
I struggled with an enormous degree of social anxiety. If I wasn't in a situation that I felt I was the alpha in the situation, like I'm the reason everyone's fucking here, my narcissism would just flare up like crazy. And I would be like, I hate this place. I'm not the center of attention. Blah. So, and I would get this, like, I don't know what to say. I don't know what to do. I don't know who I am in this environment. So being in a line with somebody who starts a conversation, or being in an elevator with somebody who starts a conversation, is like full-blown PTSD. I go black, like, "Ah, what am I doing?" But I have since adopted the attitude that I want my interactions to be fun. I don't care what we're talking about. I don't care who you are. I don't care where we are. I want to have fun, and I want to play with shit, because life is fucking serious to take seriously. So if that happened to me now, my brain would go, ooh, this is a new experience. I've never had conversations with people in a grocery line. Let's play with this. Let's see what this can be. That is an attitude that makes life a fun game that you're playing. And I'm not perfect at it by any stretch of the imagination. And it's very, very valuable strategy, I find.
One of my favorite things to do is to break, because there are some norms, cultural norms that we experience. There's some kind of even thin rule. I love to break out of that. Like, there was one of my favorite experiences. I'm going back to this grocery store. One of my favorite experiences. It's really small. It's kind of a natural food store, and it was Christmas Eve around 5 o'clock in the evening, and there were lines. There were like 4 or 5 registers, and there were lines that took 45 minutes to get through, such that they had people that worked there as runners, just in case you forgot something or decided to get in line, would go get stuff and bring it back to you.
That is nuts.
So this had been going on, by the time I got there, it'd been going on about 4 hours, like Christmas shopping, because they were going to be closed the next day. So I get to the point where I'm almost next in line, and I look and I can see a good 60 to 80 people still in line waiting to get their stuff. And they're just, and everybody's going through and they're booping their stuff, and everybody's stressed out, right? So I get to the front of the line and I'm like, yes! Yes! And I turn to all the people waiting. I'm like, oh my God, I did it! And I start high-fiving the checker and the bagger, and I'm like, oh my God! And I turned and was like, everyone, if I can do it, so can you. We're in this together. Oh my God. And I start just freaking out and jumping up and down, because everybody's just expecting, like, the rule for this sucks, we're waiting here is supposed to be like, ugh. And then you get to the line and then you complain. Like, everybody knows the line's there. It's been there for the 45 minutes you've been there. So what you don't need to do is just mention it.
But think about the experience of all of those people has been elevated.
Yes.
I've said this for a long time, that the #1 most powerful influence technique on the planet is make other people feel good.
Yeah.
If you go around the world and everybody you run into, everyone you interact with, doesn't even necessarily remember you, but their animal brain remembers that you made them smile, you made them feel pleasure in their body, you made them laugh, that you made them feel excited, you made them think about something, but not in a challenging way.
Yeah.
Then you will open the door to a life where you get anything and everything you want, because everyone you are around feels better because they were around you.
Absolutely.
Like, paying it forward.
Talk a bit more about that, becoming so joy-filled.
Did we answer Rachel's question?
I think we said a lot of things about the things. She's over here. You can't see the chats. I'm looking at them. She's joking about that you're a Leo for a moment. So she goes all, is that astrology there?
Yeah.
And then I joked back that it's Leo times 2 because we're both Leos.
Oh, really? I didn't even know that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I think she just said that, yes, we did answer her question.
Oh, good. Okay. So you said the thing about being happy, like, the primary place where this topic comes up for me is when people who have learned about hypnosis and NLP, they ask me, what can I do to help blank? Like, and it's usually a family member or friend. And it often comes out, if I dig into this conversation, that deep down, a big part of the reason that they even wanted to learn about this stuff was because there's a part of them that wanted to save that person.
Right.
And I can fully attest to that, because I think that is a huge part of why I got into all this, is that I wanted to save my mom. And, come to find out down the road, much therapy and deep introspection that I did on myself, to find out that I wanted that, not for the altruistic reasons that I suspected, but I wanted that because I thought maybe then she'll finally give me the love that I always wanted from her and never felt like I got. It's very selfish. We're all very selfish.
Yes.
And,
Save everything.
Yeah.
Save everything.
But what I've told people is that there is this paradoxically beautiful truth that the more influential you become, in many ways, the hardest people to help change, the hardest people to influence are the people closest to you.
Mm-hmm.
You're the least likely to work through enough stuff to be able to help them change. And what I tell people is the best advice that I can give you is, if you want to help the people closest to you, become so fucking happy that everyone around you cannot figure out what's wrong with you. Become so extraordinarily satisfied with life, where you have built a life that is so unusual that people can't help but be compelled to come over and ask you how you did it. Why do I recommend that? Because, and why is it so hard to change, to help the people closest to you change? Because they are the reflection of your deepest shit.
Mm-hmm.
And it requires you going to those levels to untangle the web, heal it, so that their experience, so that you can actually talk to them without, so that you can actually talk to them and not be talking to your own projection of them in your head. Most people, when they sit down to have a conversation with someone, are not talking to that person.
No.
They're talking to the picture, the internal representation, the model of that person that they have in their own head. And they're reacting to that, not what the other person is actually doing or saying.
Absolutely.
Which is one of the deeper secrets behind why sensory acuity is so valuable, by the way. Because just getting you to move your point of reference to the other person instead of in your own head, even if you don't notice anything useful, you are already opening up the door to a way of communicating that you can't do if you're stuck and lost in your own head. Getting external, using that as your frame of reference, even if you're not looking at the right things, doesn't matter as much. I mean, it's better if you're looking at useful information. But sensory acuity, one of the deeper lessons, deeper principles behind it is that it just gets you out of your head. It gets you focused on them instead of yourself.
I think that's a perfect place to begin to wrap up. So what we've done here today is we started by talking about the things on the outside are a reflection of what's inside. And then for the usefulness of NLP, we not only have these presuppositions and tenets that are useful about that, we have the contradictory paradox of working on your own self and your projections of other people in here, but also externally taking in information so that we really just did sort of contradict the 2 points, and I love it.
That's called a paradox.
Yeah.
Like, all the deepest truths in life are paradoxical, including that one.
I think that's a good place to end.
Yeah, okay.
All right.
I'm good with that.
So this has all happened. You were here, we were here.
Yeah, we just kept that for a little bit under an hour, which we were planning on going 30, 45 minutes, so you got some extra time with us. Hey, if you watch this after the fact, or if you dropped in here and you enjoyed this, and if any of you were watching all the way to the end of the video, good for you, thank you. Please like the video, comment down below, leave a question. I'm begging you, please leave questions. We're going to be collecting all these questions. Next week, we're going to come back. We're going to do this again. And the more questions we have, the deeper we can go. If we get 15 questions or whatever, 50 questions, we're just going to rapid fire through as many as we can and do it in this embedded looping metaphor kind of way. So for those of you trained in NLP and language patterns, pay attention. to the way that both of us are speaking, because this is intentional, to actually cause changes in the people listening if you want to. So please submit your questions. Come back next week. We'll be here every Thursday for at least 4 Thursdays. We're doing this as an experiment.
Absolutely.
3 Thursdays, 11 a.m. Thursday morning, Pacific time. I'll see you then.
Yeah.